What is happening is a sense we're in really the feuds moment, which I mean that until now the United States and the West has considered that it had huge leverage over China. And what is happening in this period has been that actually China now has the leverage over the West, and that consists of a number of things. China understood from what they seen with Russia that they had to not simply become dependent on the West for the import of goods. They had to do the opposite. They had to be self-sufficient. They had to build out industrial capacity. They had to change the whole economy to being a manufacturing industrial economy. This is the opposite of what happened to most of Southeast Asia. China watched what happened to Russia and understood one thing. Never rely on the West for your survival. So while America and Europe deindustrialized, China did the opposite. They rebuilt their entire economy around manufacturing and self-sufficiency. In simple terms, the leverage flipped. The West makes services and software. China makes the things the world actually runs on. And in geopolitics, production beats narratives every time. In other words, unlike the West where the market rules the state, there the state rules the market in the national interest. And so they have built a huge industrial complex. The second thing that they've done is they're managing AI in a completely different way from that of America. The AI here is not about militarized AI as it is in the US with Palantir and so on. It is here something that is simpler and is diffused throughout the economy, the manufacturing economy. China did the opposite of the West. Instead of letting markets rule the state directs the market, and it built a massive industrial base because of it. And their AI strategy is totally different too. America militarizes AI. China spreads AI through factories and industry. One builds weapons, the other builds strength. China's AI is really massive. Automation. Robots replacing workers at incredible speed. Factories that needed 2,000 people now run with 200, and production costs are collapsing. Of course, there are some difficulties with it because there are job losses in China too. And you see there's a certain slowdown on the streets, a certain cooling of the economy, although people are able to move to other industries. But one major manufacturer in China told me that his business, which used to employ 2,000 people, is down to 200 now, and the costs of production are much reduced. In fact, what is happening is that China is in price deflation. China has deflation at the same time that America and Europe have inflation, and that alone makes Western products uncompetitive. China barely needs the West now except for a few high-tech tools because it has become largely self-sufficient. And with its massive digital finance system, WeChat, Alipay, billions of transactions powered by AI, China has rebuilt its economy in a way the West simply can't match. But I don't think the President of the United States understands what you just articulated. And I don't think the tariffs he attempted to impose to control China had any of the effects that he wished. It had none of the effects on China, and the rare earths issue was just an example that China actually had the leverage completely. And the key thing is, how can tariffs work when the Chinese price level is deflating and competitiveness is changing so dramatically? It is impossible now for the West with its inflation to sell its products into China. Effectively, China is out of the equation. They don't need to buy, and it's not competitive. We are no longer competitive against China, where it has completely changed. And they've changed it in another way which the West can't match either. Everything in China is done through this financial ecosystem: WeChat, Alipay, millions of Chinese conducting business, buying and selling through these apps. And all of this absorbs AI diffusion into everyday life. The entire consumer body of 1.4 billion people is tied in. Meanwhile, the West is focused on mega data centers and militarized AI. China also has the energy to run AI at scale, cheap electricity, nuclear expansion, and new technology. They are reducing their oil dependence rapidly. Most vehicles are now electric. They are moving toward nuclear fusion and even thorium reactors. They believe these will change the energy balance in their favor. Meanwhile, the West is pouring trillions into its own style of AI, while China's open-source diffuse AI is cheap, widely used, and tied into a financial ecosystem that generates real revenue. China believes the US model is a bubble, expensive, centralized, unsustainable. China's AI, on the other hand, is already integrated into industry, finance, transport, and daily life. And the killer fact: China has price deflation while the West has price inflation. How can we be competitive? How can we have leverage in that condition? The reaction in the US will probably be to try to contain China even more. But the truth is, China has already become dominant. They have the leverage now. This is Thucydides in effect. The rising power has overtaken the established power, and the established power is struggling to accept it.